All right, my friend, it is time to verify with testing that our HA pair is working as expected. So this is on Palo Alto Firewall 1. Let's verify that real quick. This is the policy we just made. And let's go ahead and just go back to dashboard. And under general information, it says HAFW1. Great, great, great. Also, under high availability, this widget, that looks good. Synchronized, local is active, the peer is passive, which it should be, and everything else is good to go. Also, on the system logs, I noticed we have some messages here regarding HA groups. And so if we wanted to see current traffic that's flowing through the firewall, we could go up to monitor. And on the left-hand side, if we scroll down to session browser right here, that's going to show us live traffic going through. Wow, look at that. I wasn't expecting a whole bunch of stuff, but we've got some Microsoft updates that are happening. And that's from this little guy that I brought up just not too long ago. So all this information, all this session information is being replicated over the HA2 link from this firewall to the other firewall. So let me leave full screen for a moment. And let's go to firewall 2. And on firewall 2, let me just make sure we're on the right one here. So if we go to dashboard, this is firewall 2, says right there. Also, it shows local is passive. Fantastic. The other guy's active. Perfect, perfect. And if we go to monitor, and on the left, if we scroll down to session browser right here, click on session browser, look at that. It's replicating all of that information, and that's being done over HA link 2. All right, so with that in place, let's go ahead and test it and see if the failover is going to work. So we'll bring back our client, and here's our client, and let's go out to a website. Let's go to paloaltonetworks.com. All right, that works. We've got basic connectivity. Let's also launch a ping, bring up a command prompt, and let's do a ping out to 8888. And let me go ahead and do a continuous ping here. I'll do a ping with a -T, and we'll let that run. All right, so that's going. So my average delay is like, I don't know, somewhere under 20 milliseconds. Fantastic. And with that running, let's go ahead over to Firewall 1. And here on Firewall 1, let's go to Device. And with Device selected on the left, let's click on Setup. And under Operations, let's just go ahead and reboot this. And so that'll take several minutes to reboot. So we'll click on Reboot right here. And it says, are you sure? We'll say yes. Now, this, when it does a reboot, there's communication to the other device in the pair saying, hey, I'm out. Please take over. And it does. However, with the other monitoring and the heartbeats, even if there's a situation where it doesn't know it's going down, the other side should detect a failure when a failover event occurs. So if we go back here to my command prompt here, it looks like the pings are still happening, even though Firewall 1 is rebooting. So I'm going to do a Control-C. And let me scroll up. Oh, there we go. We lost one ping during the transition. Other than that, this client was blissfully unaware that there was any problem with the network, even though right now it's Firewall 2 that is actually carrying all the traffic. And to verify that, if we go back to Firewall 2, and we go back to the dashboard where we have the high availability widget, and we click on refresh, it's going to have some complaints regarding the other side, but it's currently saying I'm active. My peer at .11 is unknown because he's rebooting. So here's showing the HA1 and the heartbeat backup are both down because they're failing. That's because the other firewall is still rebooting. And HA2, which is used to replicate the session information, that's connected to a logical switch in the background. So as far as link goes, it shows it as being up, although the peer is down because it's not able to respond to heartbeats. So if we wait a minute or two here, when that other device reboots, because it has preempt enabled and it has a better, lower priority for HA, it will once again take over the active role. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and give it a few more minutes for Firewall 1 to come back up online. And because preempt is enabled, Firewall 1, when it's back online, will take over the active role. So we'll see that here in just a minute or two. All right, and we have some movement here. So I just did a refresh, and now it shows the local device is still active, but now it sees the peer as passive. But in a few additional moments, it should once again take over the role of active. Firewall 1 should, because it has a better, lower HA priority, and preempt is enabled. So let's go ahead and do one more refresh on this widget. There we go. So now the local device is once again passive. The peer is active, and there we go. We've just verified our configuration and functionality for our active-passive HA pair. So starting back with Firewall 1, which is this one right here, HAFW1, and it's currently active, and the other one's passive, everything's synchronized. Let's take a moment right now while we have them up and walk through a couple additional options we could use to trigger a failover. And so if we go back here on Firewall 1, if we go back to Device, and then over here on the left, we have High Availability. Let's go back over to Link and Path Monitoring. Under Link Group, let's click on Add. And we'll call this our Link Group. And for our link group, let's go ahead and click on add, and let's add all of our active interfaces. So 4 and 5 are HA1 and HA2, and 1/1 is the inside interface, and 1/3 is the outside interface. So here we could add interfaces that we want to monitor. And if any of these interfaces lose link, that would trigger a failover. An example of an interface losing link would be if the cable was unplugged and it was no longer receiving electrical signals from the other side. In most cases, that's a switch. So with that in place, we'll click on OK. And also, while we're at it, let's go ahead and set up some path monitoring so that if Firewall 1 loses reachability to a target, that could also trigger a failover, because if this guy can't reach his default gateway or some other internet resource, that could imply that this firewall has a problem. So if we want to add path monitoring, we could add virtual wire. We're not using that in this topology. Or add a VLAN path. We're also not using VLANs, but we are using a virtual router. So we'll click on Add Virtual Router Path. From the dropdown, we'll pick our virtual router. We're using the default virtual router, so we'll select that. And then it's asking about the ping interval. Now this is in milliseconds, so that's pretty fast. I'm going to put 10,000, which is every 10 seconds, which is good enough for the demo. And then for the ping count, let's go ahead and just do 5. And then regarding the target of that ping, let's go ahead and click on the add down here. And I'm just going to put in GW for gateway, representing my gateway address, and click on the plus symbol to add that IP address. And that is 23.1.2.1 in my little lab environment here. And we'll click on OK. So now every 10 seconds, this guy is going to send 5 ping requests out to this IP address. And if that path isn't available, meaning we don't get a response to those pings, we will go ahead and trigger a failover event. So we'll go ahead and click on OK. Then we'll go ahead and commit this by clicking on commit and commit again. And while that commits in the background, we could go back to dashboard. We have the widget for high availability. Once that commit is done, it'll also be synchronized over to the other firewall in the pair. So it'll also have that configuration. And the configuration, remember, is being replicated over HA1. While user session information, that's replicated in real time over HA2. So we'll give this a few moments to complete. Let's go down to tasks. Yep, it's still cranking away, almost done. We'll give it another moment or two. And I'm going to refresh the whole dashboard. All right, look at that. So our commit completed and the configuration also got synced with the HA peer. So currently, this is Firewall 1 right here. It is currently the active firewall. Firewall 2 is currently passive. Let's go ahead and trigger a failover event. And let's do that first of all with the link tracking. So if we go back to device, just want to verify what links I'm using. So under link and path monitoring, under high availability, we'll click on our link group. And let's go ahead and bring down Ethernet 1/1. So we'll go ahead and do that. So a pretty simple way to do that is to go to the hypervisor where all of this is running. And this is the virtual machines. And there is Firewall 1. So we'll go ahead and select it. And we'll go ahead and click on Edit for Firewall 1. And we'll take this interface, the HQ1010, which is its 1/1 interface. And we'll go ahead and say you're not connected. Sorry. And click on Save. And in real time, that firewall is now missing the link on that interface. So if we go back to the dashboard here. And there we go, right there on the widget. Wow, that happened pretty darn fast. So here it shows non-functional link down. And also shows that the other firewall is now active. So our peer is active, life is good. Now, if we had some kind of a problem we wanted to investigate, especially if we have preempt enabled, if we want to tell this firewall, hey buddy, just don't become active right now. Just go ahead and relax. We want to figure out what's going on with you. What we could do, this is on Firewall 1, we could go to Device with high availability selected. We have a subtab here called Operational Commands. And we could click right here to suspend this device regarding high availability. And if we select that, that's going to confirm that when this problem is corrected on the firewall, it's not going to automatically take over and be the active firewall again. So if we need to manually suspend it, this is how we would go ahead and do it. All right, so back at dashboard, looking at the widget, we are no longer the active firewall. Let's bring back that interface and that'll correct the problem. So we'll bring back the hypervisor. This is ESXi. And here we're looking at the details for HAFW1. So we'll click on Edit. And let's go ahead and reconnect his Ethernet 1/1 interface and click on Save. Then we'll minimize that. And then here in a moment, let's refresh this widget. Look at that. It's saying it's all corrected and now it's passive. So it's passive now, but because the priority is better, lower than the other one, in a few moments, it's going to go back to active. And then the peer, once again, will be passive. And in a few moments, when it either refreshes automatically at the 5-minute mark, because that's how it's configured, or if we manually refresh it, we'll then see that we are active. So let me go ahead and refresh just the widget. Yep, there we go, active. So if we refresh the whole page here, the whole dashboard, then we can see the most current system logs as well. And let's also try the other option that we set up with the path monitoring. So back at device, with high availability selected, we'll click on the sub-tab of link and path monitoring. Now the path to get to the virtual router's IP address in the path monitor is out gig 1 or Ethernet 1/3. I want to trigger it based on the path monitoring failing and not the interface failing. So I'm going to just, for this demo, delete the link group, click on yes. We'll go ahead and commit that, and then click on commit again. And when it's done, then we can go ahead and test and verify it's the path monitoring that's bringing it down. Also, you know what? This is also a great opportunity. If we go back to the dashboard, so here it shows firewall 1 is active and firewall 2 is passive. And currently right here it says running config synchronized. If we click on this little link, because in a moment we're not going to be synchronized because we just made some changes. If we click here, we can see the differences. So what that did was it takes us down to config audit, and you know what? Gosh, I missed it by about that much. Because see how it doesn't show any differences here? And that's because it's synchronized. If we go back to dashboard, right there, it just synchronized. So if you make a change and you're wondering, I wonder if this change has been implemented yet on the other firewall, across from running config over on the right, just click on that icon and it can show you any differences that exist. It also color codes them very much like the preview when you do a commit. So let's trigger another failover event, and this time it's going to be through path monitoring. So I'm going to edit the properties of this HAFW1 in the hypervisor. And I'm going to take the interface. This is 1/3 that goes out to the internet. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that, like pulling the Ethernet cable from the interface and clicking on save. And because it's sending a ping every 10 seconds, it shouldn't take too long for this firewall to figure out, oh no, that path is no longer available. I'm triggering a failover event. And then once again, firewall 2 would go active. So let me move that out of the way. And let me go ahead and click on refresh. So here it's showing in the system log that the port is down, but that's going to lead to the path problem. And currently under high availability, firewall 1 is still active. And let's go ahead and click on refresh. And there it goes. So here it's showing us that one or more destination IPs are down. Here it's saying that HA path monitoring groups are down. So there's our HA event. And the other device, firewall 2, became active. And it shows right here under the local device why we are not the active device. Non-functional path down. So let me do one more thing. Let me go ahead and correct that, because if I forget and leave it like that, I'll be wondering why the network isn't functioning like I think it should. So we'll click on edit, and we will go ahead and reconnect the internet interface. Click on save. Get that out of the way. And here in a moment or two, when that path monitor is now reporting responses coming back, and because we have preempt enabled, and because we have a better, lower HA priority here on firewall 1, we're expecting that firewall 1 will become the active firewall again. So it's been a moment. Let me go ahead and do a refresh, and it is back and happy. So it's currently active, and it shows the firewall 2 at .12 as being passive. So thanks for joining me for this set of videos regarding HA high availability with Palo Alto firewalls. And I'll see you, my friend, in the next set of videos. Until then, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.